All gacha games have power creep to some degree, and I think it's required. But the question is, what is the right amount of power creep? I think the answer lies in the middle somewhere. But first, what is power creep? Well, power creep for a gacha game is when the strength of new characters, relics, and other things increase gradually over time. And that degree of power creep, I think, is very important. Like, if the power creep is too high, what would end up happening is you would have a situation where it's like a sketchy business with a high turnover. So you would get a new character and then grind her for 1 to 2 months building her up, and then afterwards a new character of the exact same niche comes out, completely trivializing your character. So now your character is useless. Now you've got to pull on this new character that replaces your other character that you spent 1 to 2 months building. So it's like getting a new wife every 2 months. That does not feel good. You feel stupid for pulling the previous character. You don't want to do that. You feel like you wasted your time and resources. That's not good. But you also don't want a situation where the power creep is too low. Since if all the characters coming out are pretty much perfectly balanced, the meta players will have no incentive to pull on new characters. So you do want slight power creep to incentivize polling for new characters for the meta players. Now, there are situations where you don't want any power creep whatsoever. Or power creep is just irrelevant, like in Infinity Nikki. It's a platformer where the only thing you pull on is outfits, so power creep doesn't even apply. And then for other games, if it's PvP centric, or if there's a PvP mode, that mode gotta be power creep friendly. There's gotta be no power creep. And the only gacha game that I feel like does that correctly is Mormons. In Mormons, the PvP is a separate system. All the characters, there are no levels, they're rebalanced, they do completely different things, and you have completely different cards, and the game plays like a completely different game. And I like that, because PvP, it's really about player versus player. It shouldn't be about play who has the most money versus who has more money. That makes no sense to me. That's just a leaderboard. That's not PvP, okay? So overall, you want power creep to incentivize the meta player to pull for new characters, but you also don't want to annoy the casual players because they can't keep up with the meta with all the characters. So what do you do? Well, I think the game that has the most optimal power creep is Honkai Star Rail. Firstly, characters have different mechanics like follow-up attacks, break effect, DOT, and characters have different rows, characters have different elements, which means the power creep is actually spaced out a little bit. For example, if there's a new super powerful win DOT character that surpasses Black Swan, it doesn't necessarily Genshin Impact follow-up teams or break effect teams, so that's good. The next thing they do very well is that for the majority of game content, you don't even need the new characters. The game gives you the trial characters for the story content. The game gives you the trial characters for events when you need those characters. And the game even has support characters you can use if you don't have the character. And the only mode in the game where you actually need your own characters is the endgame modes that come out once every 3 weeks and is just a couple fights. And even then, you can clear most of it with the OG characters. You might not be able to get max stars, but who cares? So the game really doesn't push you to get new characters. And I like that. It doesn't force the casual player to have to pull for new characters, to have the best account. And the power creep for the relics is actually pretty good because it's very gradual. There are no relics of the same row where it deals twice the damage of the other one. Like, let's take a look at Akron. On Pridewind, the Azumo set is 100% DPS, and the very first set that was released, the Space Sealing Station, that's at 95%. So it's still relatively pretty close in strength. So I'd say you could farm Space Sealing set and you'd be perfectly fine. In fact, I'm not using any of these sets. I'm using a garbage relic, apparently. But you know what? The substat makes up for it. I got 30% crit damage on this rope. Very good. So the situation we have in Honkai Star Rail is that there is gradual power creep over time to incentivize the meta player to pull for new characters, and at the same time, the vast majority of the content can be cleared by a casual player who has a much weaker account. And that is very good. So overall, I believe power creep is very important in a gacha game. You gotta have slight power creep so that you take money from the meta players, but you also don't push away the casuals and you still take their money as well. And there we go.